Good evening. Welcome to the community of viewers to meet the Ithaca Common Council Ward 3 candidates in tonight's forum. Tonight, the forum is sponsored by the City Democratic Committee and Ward 3 in conjunction with the Tompkins County Democratic Committee. We are supporting a fair forum environment. I'm Linda Hoffman. I am the chair of the Tompkins County Democratic Committee. This forum is a run-up to the primary on June 27th for the Ithaca Common Council. There's a special thank you to you as residents of Ward 3 who contributed the questions. We will be sharing with you two candidates running in Ward 3 on the Democratic ticket for the 4-year seat. I'd like to right now turn over the forum to Fred Balfour, who is the moderator this evening. Fred is retired and serves on the WRFI news team volunteer. Fred, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Linda, and good evening to our audience. And let me add my welcome to the candidates. To get started, let's review tonight's guidelines. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for closing. David, you will lead the opening statements, and Nathan, you will lead the closing statements. For the questions, I'll alternate who responds first. You'll have 2 minutes for an answer. Our timer, John Oakley, will show a time card when there are 15 seconds remaining, as he's showing right now. And at 0 seconds, he will show the 0 and call a stop. And after a few seconds, we will ask you again pretty nicely the first time. A comment on the questions for tonight. The Ward 3 constituents submitted all the questions, and many thanks to all of you who took the time. The committee picked out a set of which balanced the issues and consolidating similar questions into one, or rewording in some cases for either brevity or clarity. Some of the questions are long and nuanced. If you are the second responder and you want me to repeat the question, just ask. It will not count against your 2 minutes. And one last detail, will everyone keep yourselves muted except when you are speaking? David, can you start us off with the opening statement?
Sure, can you hear me okay?
Sounds good.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Shapiro. And some of you might have met me before. This isn't my first time running for office. And if we had more time, I could tell you a lot more meaningful story to me about what drives my commitment to serve our community. But I don't think that's why you're here today, and I'll try to save that story for another time. What I think is important for me to share today is that my wife and I moved here 13 years ago. And we had spent our time before that raising our family, growing up in New York City. And it became just a life that we just couldn't live and couldn't afford, and we just didn't enjoy the quality of life that we have for our kids anymore. And we were lucky. My wife was getting her PhD at Cornell at the time. I was able to find a good job here, and we were able to buy a house. And 13 years later, we haven't looked back once. This life, the life we live, the life my kids live, it's a real blessing. And it's also starting to feel like a privilege. What I've become a lot more aware of more recently is how hard it is now for people to come and live in and gain access to and enjoy the same life that I've come to enjoy, that my family's come to enjoy. In fact, if we were moving here today, we wouldn't be moving here today because we wouldn't be able to afford to. But that's not the only reason I'm running. The other reason I'm running is because I really think that I can help. I've devoted my entire career, the last 20 years, working in various human and social service programs, helping agencies overcome really challenging fiscal and operational challenges. I hope that I can use the skills and the perspectives that I've learned in all these different areas to bring value to the Common Council. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Nathan, can you introduce yourself and present your opening statement?
Sure, yeah. My name's Nathan. I don't have anything scripted for today. I can write a maximum of one opening statement per week, probably is the energy level I have. So I used that up yesterday. I'll say I came here for grad school back in 2015. studying physics and how I got interested in politics in the community was through experiencing the rising cost of living and trying to organize with the Cornell Graduate Students United to get grad students at Cornell better pay and better benefits. So workers' rights are something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've continued that work with the Tompkins County Workers Center, where I'm currently treasurer. Yeah, looking a little bit bigger picture, I guess, since I still have some time, I'll say that I feel like Ithaca is in a really interesting place financially and in terms of what it wants to accomplish, because our budget is in a difficult spot. We have a lot of debt, and we have a lot of housekeeping kinds of things to do, like properly funding our public works department, taking care of potholes, taking care of infrastructure that's going to help us handle flooding in the future and that sort of thing. But there are also areas where we'd really like to invest money to be a leader in solving problems like improving the quality of life for unhoused people and being a leader in the Green New Deal, those sorts of things. So how do we handle these different priorities, I think, is a big question. So being able to somehow balance these priorities and find ways to meet the needs of people in a variety of different situations in this town.
Thank you both. And now we'll get to the questions. David, we'll start with you. You are both running in a Democratic primary. If you lose, do you pledge not to campaign as a third-party candidate? And will you support the winner and urge your supporters to do so? And if not, why? You got to unmute, David. Okay, now you can go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say that again one more time? It was the pledge question.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, let's get restarted here. We'll restart.
No, that's
You're
okay.
both running. You want to repeat?
I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me get going. My route to the Democratic Party wasn't a linear path. When I first joined the Democratic Party, I was 17. As I moved around and had to re-register, sometimes I re-registered as an independent, other times I re-registered as a Democrat. 5 years ago, when I made my first run for Tompkins County Legislature, I made a real commitment to myself and to the party that I was going to be a part of this party, win, lose, or draw. Today, I will pledge that if I don't win this election, if I don't win this primary, my race will be ended. My race will be over at that point. As it relates to supporting the other candidate, I think I would like to support the Democratic candidate. I'd like to know a little bit more, and I've continued to kind of talk to Nathan throughout these different forums. What separates him and his views, and how is he going to think about supporting the city versus supporting like what the slate's views are? So I think that's just caused a little bit of confusion for me in understanding what I'll be supporting if you were to beat me in the primary. But I think that's probably something that would be overcome just through more forums and more conversation like this. So I would imagine if he won, that he would get my support.
Thank you. And now, Nathan, your response to the question?
Yeah, so for me, as many of you already know, I am the Working Families Party endorsed candidate for this race, so I'll be on the Working Families Party line. And I understand there are a lot of people in this ward who are registered under that party or like to vote the Working Families Party line. And I'm not going to tell them to do otherwise, frankly. That's nothing against David, although I definitely echo some of what David said. I'd like to have more of a dialogue with him after the race, regardless of the outcome of the race, so that we can understand each other a little bit better, and so that I can understand some things about David's background and his experience and where he's coming from a little bit better than I do now.
Thank you, Nathan. You lead on question 2, which is on accessory dwelling units. The question is, the percentage of owner-occupied housing in Ithaca has shrunk over the past 30 years. On South Hill, it's declined from 70% owner-occupied to 30%. The city has proposed to not require owner occupancy for a housing unit to add on an accessory dwelling unit. The city's proposal was strongly protested and a moratorium was placed on such ADU developments, while a zoning overlay for at least South Hill was put together. Will you vote to continue to limit accessory dwelling unit development only to owner occupied houses? What other steps might you take to foster home ownership?
Yeah, so for me as a tenant, I'm someone who, like a lot of tenants, aspires to take that step at some point in my life and become a homeowner. And having that path exist is really important to me, and making sure that the trend of having an increasing number of housing units which are not owner occupied is somehow halted, so that there still exists a path towards that life for young people and people starting families. So I think ADUs are a great option to densify. I think there's a lot of potential there, and that's an idea that I support. There's also a lot of nuance with how can we it'll be like herding cats, having a lot of different homeowners building these things. So I think the city should be prepared for that and ready to address the needs of both the owners and the people who are going to be living there. But having the main building be owner occupied, I think, is a great thing, and that's something that I'd support, while also looking at this as a pretty good option to densify some of our neighborhoods and meet our housing needs.
David, your response
Sure.
to ADUs.
Sure. Well, I think, like Nathan, they're a great opportunity to add density into our neighborhoods. So we're running out of land throughout the city. And what it isn't like we can just create new land. So we need to think creatively of how to densify our neighborhoods. I know I know quite a few people who wouldn't have been able to purchase a home if not for the fact that it had a rental apartment as part of it. And these aren't wealthy friends of mine. These are people that have, everyday people that wouldn't have an opportunity to buy a home but for those rental units or those ADUs that are attached to them. I wholeheartedly support owner occupancy. And if given the position to vote on ADU zoning that does not include owner occupancy, then I'm not going to vote for that. I think our neighborhoods, our residential neighborhoods need that. I think when these family homes are converted into transient rentals, they never turn back. When we have, I think I'll just leave it there. I think we need to preserve the ability for families and for residential neighborhoods to exist in a safe way while also pursuing density. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. David, question 3 starts with you, and it's on street traffic. The volume and speed of traffic in Bell Sherman Bryant Park and South Hill has been an increasing problem, particularly on Ithaca Road. Pedestrian safety is a real concern in both of these walkable neighborhoods. What are your views on a reduced speed limit? Will you advocate for funds to address the traffic issues and pedestrian safety issues in our neighborhoods?
I've heard some discussion about a reduced speed limit. I'm not against a reduced speed limit. I think I live on Mitchell Street. I certainly have been on Ithaca Road plenty. I've driven up and down, Hudson and Aurora. These streets are like really dangerous, especially they're like driving around near school zones. The city has tried to do things like add some signage here and there, add some speed bumps here and there. In my opinion, they haven't been effective. I live like in front of a prime example of that. Actually, I see cars speeding down a hill and losing hubcaps quite often. The second part of that question, I think, was about investing money into fixing these problems. I think clearly that's one of the main responsibilities of the local government, is to think about our infrastructure. I think Nathan alluded in the beginning that we have a significant debt in our budget. We also have an underfunded or understaffed DPW department, so these things aren't easily solved. But I think we do need to be a little more, or maybe a lot more strategic in thinking about how to improve the safety of pedestrians and bikers. And I think one of the ways the city can do that, while they've offered a tool for us as citizens to offer input on roads and things that should be repaired, they don't often come to us when they're about to start these projects. So I have my house is a perfect example, because they've both built a curb cut and a speed bump in front of me, and they're not helpful to anybody. The snow clogs the curb cut. It's not connected to the crosswalk. The speed bump is further down. The signs confuse everybody. And I think, like, if that crew would have came to me and the other houses around us, and likewise in these other neighborhoods, when they try to implement these things, if they talk to us before they implement the plans, there'll be better plans, and my guess is we'll save some money in the way.
Nathan, your response to question 3 on traffic problems.
Yeah, there's a similar question in the debate yesterday, and reflecting back on a lot of conversations with people in different neighborhoods. I'm thinking that a slogan like "bumps where we want them and not where we don't" is something that could play really well and resonate a lot with people when it comes to the roads. Thinking about in my neck of the woods of South Hill, Aurora Street in particular, going by the school. No speed bumps right there at the moment. And yeah, I guess the one thing I want to add to what David said is something that comes up a lot in these conversations and these discussions is with the fire department. Because if you want to add speed bumps in places, there's often pushback. Well, this is going to increase travel time for fire trucks, and also for fire trucks and buses. They're hitting these bumps at speed. That's something that causes maintenance issues potentially. So I tried to do a little bit of reading on this, and it seems like some options like speed tables rather than speed bumps are considered a little bit more effective than your basic speed bump in terms of managing these dual priorities of not having passenger cars flying at 40-45 miles an hour, while also allowing emergency vehicles to cross over these bumps without endangering themselves or their vehicles. Yeah, this is clearly a very important issue to a lot of constituents, and one that I'm interested in researching in detail and trying to find the best solutions possible.
Thank you both. Nathan, for question 4, we want to ask about your priority on issues. What 3 issues specific to the new 3rd Ward have interested you most in recent years? How might you best address these issues if you are elected to City Council?
3 issues specific to the 3rd Ward. Okay, I'm going to start with one issue, and I'll see if I can get through 3. So one issue which comes up a lot, which is the one that's sort of most obviously specific to the 3rd Ward, is that there's this feeling among a lot of residents, as was alluded to in an earlier question, that it's very lucrative for investors to buy properties and turn them into student rentals in particular. And that sort of led to this long-term decay in owner occupancy, and also just a decrease in the continuity and feel of the neighborhood. So doing what we can to encourage owner occupancy and not give in to these foreign investors is important. And part of that is just looking at Cornell and how they're dealing with students and student housing, which is right now they have the situation where, well, freshmen and sophomores are going to be living on campus, but the last 2 classes have been the biggest ones in Cornell history that they've admitted. And these people are going to be upperclassmen. They have to live somewhere. So getting Cornell to build on-campus housing that's going to accommodate a broader range of students so that they're not continuously putting this pressure on the rental market and creating this financial incentive, that's really important. And I know I've wasted most of my 2 minutes talking about just one issue, but I feel like that is really a very important Ward 3 specific issue that's affects all parts of the ward. In terms of ward specific things, I mean, we already talked about roads, but I don't know, that's not just a Ward 3 thing. That's obvious all of Ithaca, but that's, what can I say? That's what comes up in conversations the most.
David, your response to question 4 on your priorities in Ward 3.
Sure, thank you. You know, your first or your second and third question really tie together one of the main priorities that, or at least should be for anyone that's representing Ward 3. When we talk about walkability, street safety, owner occupancies, those are all things that people in Ward 3 are interested in. And if you're hearing and listening to your constituents, those, like I'm doing at least, then those are things that I'll be pursuing and making a priority. Some of the other issues are maybe a little less exciting for people, but one of the things that's really exciting for me about wanting to get involved is some of the greatest success I've had professionally has been helping organizations turn around their financial situations. And I think when we all talk about the affordability issues in Ithaca, whether you're owning or renting, the high tax is hitting us all the same. And a lot of, and that has to be looked at. And I think our financial house, so to speak, needs to be put back in order. I think we have a lot of debt. And like I said, our taxes are pretty high, and we have a lot of projects that people want to pursue that are going to cost more money as well. Things like how do we invest in the new Green New Deal, for instance? I'm sure there'll be another question about that. But taxes are a really important issue, and understanding how to work in the financial, within those kind of reports and in those systems, and how to have that kind of dialogue where you can bring about meaningful change to the finances is important. And I think it's important to every ward. One of the other ways that I think all of our wards, I think, should be interested in and should both connect to both helping us improve our city finances, but as the hiring of the city manager. I would really hope that with all the different ways that I've been able to hire and recruit, retain staff in the past, that I would just love to be involved in helping this city transform our government. Thank you.
Thank you both. A quick comment to John Oakley, our timer, we're running a little ahead of schedule, so this next question is going to be, I think, worth a little more time. Let's do 3 minutes on question 5, John. Is that, you can make your iPhone run 3 minutes? Good man. David, you're the lead on this one, and it's on tax rates, which was touched on briefly, but this will give you some more time. Property tax rate for city homeowners has become unsustainable, even as assessments have increased and there are more city properties on the tax rolls. Last year, city taxes increased 10%, even as the county and neighboring municipalities held their tax rates constant or decreased them as property assessments rose. Aside from increasing Cornell's contribution, how else would you increase revenues? What trade-offs would you make concerning what should and should not be funded?
Sure.
David, take it away, David, and take 3 minutes. Take it away and take 3 minutes.
Well, herein lies the problem with the city budget. There isn't a whole lot to cut. You have just a few basic departments that are servicing our community in public safety, the roads, water, et cetera. You have our youth services department, who would both probably say they need more money. And now you have other entities coming to the city also looking for additional funds. The recent meeting had a couple of different nonprofits looking for funding. And these are all important, like, things that we want to support. Maybe not specifically the 2 nonprofits, but we all have a lot of things we want to support. Things like in the Green New Deal, a lot of the ways we'll make real investment in their Green New Deal is investing with money into, like, some of the priorities that we want to see accomplished. But these are all spending things. You know, I think one of the things that any council person needs to be comfortable with is how to make difficult choices. So in the short term, what you're trying to do when you're managing yourself out of like a financial mess is think about the little things that are costing money and how to trim back little things that are really wasteful, that you lose sight of when times are good. But you do lose sight of them, and it happens all the time, and those things add up, and they might just be pennies, nickels, dollars, and little things like that, but they add up, and those are the first things that you need to be looking at when you're in a financial crisis. As those things start, as you start peeling back those layers, you start figuring out how to pay back more debt or how to reinvest money elsewhere. But I think these things happen over time. I think what we need to do is start being a lot more responsible with how we're thinking about our city finances. So certainly, and I won't go into a lot of this, but certainly Cornell contributing would help a lot of this. But that is a hopeful for all of us. It's not part of this conversation today, and it's just something that we'll hope that happens. We'll all be advocating for, but it's not part of the tax base. It's not part of the taxes that we're collecting to support the budgets, to support the city budget. The city really just needs to continue to take a strong approach at managing responsibly. So when we think about some of the things we want, like for instance, some people want free TCAP. I don't think the time is right for that. I would love to pursue that at a future point in time, but right now my priority would be thinking about how to reallocate funds so that we could give them to the workers, the drivers and the mechanics of the system, so that we can make our system sustainable. I'm sorry, I see I have 15 seconds left. I could go into a lot more detail, but these are just some of the ways that, is that 3 seconds? Thank
We'll
you.
swing back around if we have time at the end and let you pick off what you'd like to revisit. Nathan, your response to question 5 on taxes.
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what David said, and I'm also in some sense going to be non-committal in that just, yeah, we're going to face tough decisions, and there's probably no getting around that. And a lot of that comes from people are wondering, why is our spending going up? Where is all this money going? Well, most of it is paying the salaries of public workers, and guess what? The cost of living is going up like crazy. A lot of public workers feel like they can't afford to live in the city where they work. So it's almost like a vicious cycle in that way. The more the cost of living rises, the more strain it puts on the city budget, and that we need to pay our public workers a fair amount to do their job in a city where it's just become quite expensive to live. So yeah, that is a difficult state of affairs for the city. And I was talking to someone who's involved in the assessment process, and I think 98% of homeowners in Ithaca saw their assessments go up last year. That's a pretty incredible percentage on top of the 10% increase in tax rate. So completely understand how homeowners are feeling the strain, and also understand how that gets passed on to tenants. Like my rent increased from $1,300 to $1,500 last year. That's not atypical. That's a big increase, and that's affordable housing quickly becoming unaffordable because of these same effects. Yeah, what else do I want to say on this? I guess the other thing, if we want to think strategically about how to allocate our money, thinking about something like TCAP, for instance, and also maybe things like flood abatement. There are some places we can invest our money where there's the potential for them to sort of pay for themselves, at least to some extent, because I think flood abatement is sort of the more obvious one. You invest some money now, and you're going to save money over time in flood insurance. So that's a good financially responsible thing to do, that A, is meeting people's needs, B, is creating jobs, C, is also putting us long-term in a better financial position. I think investing in like our public transportation infrastructure arguably also falls into that category of just having fewer cars on the road, um, creating better ways for people to get to and from work and to and from the grocery store, that sort of thing. There are some ways that are like particularly sensible, logical ways to prioritize.
Thank you both. If you're just joining us, we are talking to the two candidates running in the primary for the new Ward 3's four-year seat on the Ithaca Common Council. David Shapiro and Nathan Sitaraman. Sorry, Nathan. I always struggle on that second syllable. Primary, by the way, will be on June 27th and the general election on November 7th. Nathan, question 6 is your turn to lead off. That's a short one, so I'll give you a chance to get some water in there. Can you talk about the plans to address homelessness in Ithaca, specifically the latest plan, Home Together? What types of solutions do you favor?
Yeah, so when it comes to solving the problem of homelessness, I definitely believe in a housing first approach because as I'm sure I know David has a lot of experience in this. I'm sure he'll talk about in detail in his answer. A lot of these people are struggling with addiction. They've been victims of abuse, and they need an opportunity to begin a healing process. And having housing is the first step for a lot of people to begin to overcome the trauma they face, to begin to heal, to begin to overcome addiction, and to like have a real chance to get some stability in their life, begin applying to jobs, that sort of thing. So I really like the Home Together approach and having that housing first approach. And I guess the other side of this coin, the other thing that's been talked about lately is increasing enforcement on unhoused people camping in certain areas. I think that's an example of a really bad way to invest public resources and public money. If you do the math, I think every hour that a police officer spends responding to calls is a cost of about $1,400 for taxpayers. So that's a month of rent. So instead of having sending our public workers out to like kick people out of tents and move people around, just that those public resources are much better served putting people in homes, not moving them around from place to place, keeping them unhoused. That doesn't help anyone.
David, your response to homelessness.
Sure. First, I want to start by talking about the plan you mentioned, the Home Together plan, which I think you categorize. Well, I don't remember how you categorized it, but I want to make clear that this is a county plan, not a city plan. It was put together in a continuum of care. And I think therein lies part of the problem in why the city has struggled to respond appropriately to the growing number of homeless people on the streets these days. In that we haven't been partnering with the county. We see a lot of the people that are living homeless or unhoused in the city of Ithaca. And a lot of people then make the assumption that these are city of Ithaca problems. These are city of Ithaca people. These people come from a lot of different places, often from all over the county, more recently from places outside of the county. But I think what's important is that the county plays the role that they need to play. The city's responsible for keeping our places clean, and where the people are camping right now, there's some arguments to be made for the role that DPW might be able to play in there. I don't think, and like Nathan, I don't think there's an argument to be made for sending police into these areas. I think there's certainly some danger in those areas right now, and that's true. But I don't think the approach to helping these people is with police. And what I do think the approach is for helping these people is for the Tompkins County Whole Health Department to start a 24-hour mobile crisis unit staffed by social workers and peers that can respond to any kind of issue that we want, like any type of behavioral, mental, substance abuse, street issue, things that we deem non-violent and behavioral in nature. This is a funded model that many counties throughout the New York State have operated, including Family Services of Chemung County, where I used to work. This is a program that is funded by Medicaid dollars. It's funded by state and federal dollars, and it's something that counties should be doing and stepping in to help us out.
Thank you. David, you get the lead on question 7, which revisits something that's been mentioned briefly before, and that is on bicycle issues. Question is as follows. Bicycles, both owned and rented for the moment, are seen as one aspect of making Ithaca more person-friendly while still getting people around efficiently and without adding to pollution. The city has implemented several approaches, such as share roads, bike boulevards, bike lanes, the waterfront trail, bike racks on TCAT buses, and Ithaca Bike Share. Which of these do you think have succeeded?
Oh gosh, I mean, to some degree, they've all succeeded a little bit. I mean, you see people riding, or at least leaving a lot of these bikes around town. You do see them riding as well. I think my concerns with some of the ways we partnered in the past is when we, and I don't know the details of our current arrangement, but when we were partnered with the Green Bike Company, the city didn't get a single dollar from that. There was no revenue that generated. We just brought in a company that we thought could do the job, and they took all the money with them. And one of the things that my wife and I, we used to think about was like, don't they rent and fix bikes at the Youth Bureau? Why isn't that something we're investing in? If there's like, doesn't Southside fix bikes? Aren't these, quasi departments of the city? We talk about your question before, or a few questions ago, was about revenue generation. And so I'm thinking out loud a little bit now, but I'm thinking like, why are we bringing in like these outside entities to rent our neighbors' bikes when we have like really good entities in town that everybody supports that can also generate more revenue if we give them an opportunity to be our partner? So that might be one way I'd also try to pursue new revenue if I was on council.
Nathan, your response on bicycle issues.
Yeah, so like David said, I think a lot of these things have worked really well, and I love our local organizations like Bike Walk Tompkins and other organizations, RIBS, that are interested in facilitating this and making bike travel accessible to more people in Ithaca. I will say, as important an issue as potholes and the general safety of roads is for drivers, it's an even bigger issue and an even bigger barrier for people who want to use bikes to get around. For those of you watching on Zoom, you may be able to see this scar on my chin from where I crashed on a pothole on a beautiful day some years ago in Ithaca. So I think, yeah, having more bike lanes and that sort of thing is good, but just generally having the roads be in better condition, because it's like, as bad as it is for your car, it's an even bigger danger to people as cyclists when our roads are in bad condition, and that discourages people from cycling at all, which is a shame because, as the question pointed out, a lot of money has been invested in encouraging cycling, and it's a shame if people don't take it up because our roads aren't safe. And I guess
Thank you.
since I have some time left,
Take it away.
I'll also say it's pretty cool that battery technology is improving every year. And I don't know, 20 years ago, it would have seemed crazy to like have this be a super bike friendly city just because of all of the hills and how do you bike up these hills. But between being able to put your bike on a bus and having improving electric bike technology over time, there's really an opportunity that's appearing there, and I think that's great.
All right, Nathan, question 8 is on the city workforce. What steps should the city take to attract and retain an excellent municipal workforce, including firefighters and police officers?
Yeah, so as I alluded to in my earlier question, it's the city has definitely felt rightly pressure to give good pay and good benefits to these workers because this is an expensive city to live in. And I can imagine for potential applicants and people in the departments, like with DPW, they got their contract signed, but that was contentious and it dragged out and ultimately the workers had to settle for some sacrifices in terms of their benefits. And it's I don't think they got a terrible deal or anything, but it's definitely, in terms of hiring and stuff, it's a different situation than it could be if we were able to offer these people better contracts with better benefits. So when it comes to trying to get more money and a better deal with Cornell, being mindful that we're sharing a lot of the same public infrastructure, being able to pay those workers appropriately and staff those departments is a big priority of that. Since it specifically mentioned police officers and firefighters, I think since I have limited time, I feel like the staffing of the police department is probably specifically on people's minds. As it stands, we're offering quite high salaries and our search radius has expanded and expanded to the point where we're hiring people who are far, far outside of the Ithaca community. I don't think that's desirable or sustainable, and that's part of my motivation to seek a model for public safety that's going to rely more on unarmed responders who are potentially recruited from within our neighborhoods and from different demographics than would ordinarily apply to a police department. And being able to hire from within our communities in that way could get the work done more easily.
Okay, David, your response on Ithaca workforce.
Sure. I've spent a lot of time in my career thinking and working on ways to recruit and retain people. And what I can tell you is that pay is important, but that's not always the reason people leave. Pay usually is the reason people say yes. And what we see all over our region of New York is that other municipalities are offering higher wages in all sorts of departments. You see that, I know we're talking about the city, but you see the same thing in our school system. So what we do need to do is analyze all of the positions working in the municipal government and thinking about, are we making competitive offers to them? Because I think there's a lot of debate or even fact that says we're not doing that right now. I think what's also happening and why a lot of people aren't retained is because we're also having a big suffering of morale throughout the city departments right now. And that is both related to pay and unrelated to pay. I think a lot of the public discourse, certainly around the police department, certainly influences how other municipal employees feel as well. And I think we can have a lot of reasonable debates about how we want to invest in public safety. I think what has often happened though locally is these reasonable debates turn into really divisive statements about people wearing the badge, people serving in other departments as well. And we have to really remember that all the people that are working in our city are people. They get involved in the police force or the fire station or DPW for all sorts of different reasons. But they're people and they need to be treated with people and cared for. And I think our government should spend a little bit more time thinking about how to treat them well.
Okay, we've got two more questions and I encourage you, at the end, we'll have an extra few minutes. I would encourage you to think about what issues you want to revisit or what issues we haven't touched on. And we'll give you, say, 3 minutes each on something that you can choose yourself. David, you're starting off on question 9, which is on tenants' rights, which has come up already a couple of times. Will you speak about housing inequity and tenants' rights in terms of Ward 3?
Sure. Certainly, if you pay attention to the Slate's platform, they talk a lot about a lot of the tenant rights that are being the ETPA and several things that have been passed in New York State or New York City, excuse me, that have now been allowed to kind of like trickle out throughout the different municipalities in New York. I think there's still a lot of debate locally about, I think there's still a lot of debate locally about whether or not this is the right solution that we want to pursue. I think certainly tenants deserve all the rights that they should be awarded in terms of like, you're living in a place, you're like taking good care of it, and there's no good reason that landlords should be able to just kick you out right after that. And I'm not sure where that line is in these new kind of laws that we've been talking about. Again, I think I think a lot of what the city should be focusing on is a lot of the zoning and the ADUs that we think about and how to make those a lot more affordable so that landlords and tenants can have a little bit more of a working relationship with each other and learn how to keep those rates down. But I think if we're gonna pursue like things like the ETPA that was designed for a big city like New York City, then I think we have to spend a lot more time debating it. I think there's a lot more that people need to learn about those types of rules and regulations before we go ahead and start that in the city of Ithaca.
Okay, let's see here. I'm Nathan, tenants' rights from your standpoint?
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like these are things that tenants have been fighting for a long time, for a really long time in some places. And it's definitely been frustrating effectively being told by city leadership over the last 10 years, you guys shut up. Listen, we're going to build this new luxury housing and there's going to be this trickle down effect, and that's what's going to create more affordable housing for you. And we've sort of been forced to watch painfully, agonizingly over year after year after year, these savings and this increase in housing is supposed to trickle down to us somehow. And like I said, I mean, my rent went up $200 last year, and that's I think there's definitely a sense that on a year-to-year basis, more places are becoming unaffordable for tenants, and we're tired of just talking about these issues and being like, okay, maybe we need to discuss for another year what solutions are there. We want tenant protections now. We want something that's going to stabilize rent now, because we're losing affordable housing faster than we're creating it, and that's just a matter of fact. And a lot of these houses are ones that the one that I live in, this thing is 140, 150 years old, and it's in some ways not necessarily in the best condition. And I want to be able to advocate for my right to a safe place to live, a place that's going to have adequate heating in the winter. I didn't have that last year. And I want to be able to advocate for these things without fearing that going to make some request, some demand of my landlord for something that I deserve and get retaliated against because my landlord doesn't want to put up with that and would rather have a different tenant. It's something I care a lot about.
And if you want to come back around to that when we have some free time, you can get back on that issue. Nathan, you lead off on question 10, which is on intercity cooperation. Efficiencies of scale and economy might be achieved by cooperation between the county and the city and the town of Ithaca. Do you see any areas that are ripe for such cooperation?
Yeah, I mean, I think David hit on this really well on how, like, with issues of how to deal with the problem of unhoused people and providing social services and those sorts of things, those are things where we definitely need to think beyond a city level and see how we can connect with the county and with neighboring municipalities to work together and to find funding and solve these issues. And that's something that I've really been trying to make an effort to do personally is make those connections with people in neighboring municipalities, like I'll say like Rich DiPaolo. I've been looking forward to connecting with him. I know that he's someone who really cares about bringing Cornell and making Cornell pay from a perspective of the town of Ithaca. So I want to make that connection. Had a great meeting with Don Hartel, who was mayor of Lansing for 25 years and has a ton of experience there, and addressing some of the same problems that we face in the city of Ithaca, like just figuring out how to meet these basic needs of getting potholes filled and figuring out how to get the town debt free, which was not always the case. So these are not connections that I've had all my life. That it's something it's become clear to me as the campaign has gone on, that these are going to be really important for me. If I'm going to be an effective representative, I need to be proactive in building these connections, not just within the city of Ithaca, meeting with people on Common Council, meeting with people who've served before on Common Council, but meeting with people in rural areas and other parts of the county, because we really are intimately connected with them.
David, your response on intercity and intercounty cooperation?
Sure, and I did touch on it, and you can read about, I wrote an op-ed in the Ithaca Times. There are some really tangible ways that the city and the county can be working together, where the county should be picking up a heavier lift in some of the ways they can and should be providing services. And some of the ways that I mentioned, they're like, you know, the city's currently thinking about like hiring a co-response team within the police force. I'm talking about not adding expenses and having another way of achieving that same goal. But I think this happens through dialogue and collaboration with the county. You're also seeing both the county and the city are hiring a housing coordinator. So we understand there's this big homeless issue, and our goal and our response to that is to now hire 2 new staff people. I haven't yet heard exactly how those folks are going to solve the problem, but I wonder if it's a waste of money. I do think one of our biggest opportunities to think about how to build new housing, how to generate and increase our tax base, how to eliminate a lot of duplication in services is I really think, and this might seem like a pie in the sky kind of thing, but I really think the city and the town makeup is archaic. I think that should be one municipality. I think there has been discussion in years past about what it would look like for the city and the town to merge. And I think especially as we start thinking about flood maps and the way the climate is affecting where we live, I think we really need to be thinking about, with this town, why do we have 2 municipalities? Why do we have 2 different, cleaning staffs and all the different things that we duplicate? Why do we still need these? They might have made sense 100 years ago. I don't think it makes sense for the way government operates today.
Okay, we've got a few minutes before closing statements. Nathan, would you like to take a free-for-all kind of question, or a set of issues, or an approach, or something? And I'll ask John to take a 3-minute timer once you start, Nathan. What haven't we touched on that is in your court that you really would like to work on?
Yeah, so I guess one thing we haven't touched on that also comes to mind when we talk about social services is when it comes to mental health care and child care, something that I think has been kind of overlooked is Cornell, as some of you may know, has its own on-campus counseling for mental health care, and they have a daycare program that workers with children can apply to have their kids get into. And the thing about both of these programs is that they're so far short of meeting the demand among Cornell students and Cornell staff for these services. And as a result, a lot of people who are in line for childcare or who are in need of mental health care just immediately get referred out to providers in the community instead, because Cornell is like way beyond its capacity to serve all these people. And I think that's just crazy. It's like Cornell really needs to expand its childcare services and its mental health services so that the community resources on these grounds are more abundant and available to members of the community, and there's not this like incredible competition for limited community resources. Cornell has the ability to hire people from around the country to come here and staff these places, and they just don't. So yeah, I guess I decided to give that instead of my sort of more generic make Cornell pay speech, because maybe adding a little bit of nuance. It's not just about like what's the exact amount that the MOU is going to be. We want to push them on other issues too, like doing their fair share for housing and doing their fair share for social services, where right now it's just very obvious that they're not. Some people on here probably know what the wait time is if you want to get your kid into one of the Cornell daycare programs. I've heard like years. It's completely absurd. But yeah, I can end it there and save more talk for my closing statement. I don't know. How much time have I got left? 15. Yeah, I'll save the rest for my closing statement.
Excuse me. Yes, right. You can take closing statement as well. David, free for all, pick your own
Sure.
topic or expand on a previous topic.
Sure, I think I'll just continue on the thread that Nathan started. I can go in a lot of detail about Cornell's mental health, but that's jargon that you all don't want to hear about. And they are not meeting the need of their students. Just like their Cornell daycare, which I've had some kids go to, and it's a great program. Nowhere in our community is there. We're lacking resources in childcare everywhere. So I of course agree with both of those things for childcare and mental health. But I want to kind of bring up a story that was, or maybe a reflection from a city council meeting a couple of meetings ago, where Cynthia Brock and George McGonigal were discussing what was their proposal for providing some basic infrastructure, facilities and cleaning type infrastructure for the folks that are living unhoused downtown. And this became a kind of a debate on the council. And at some point, Phoebe Brown was making some excellent points about, we're not, those are just some of the homeless people you're seeing. They're mostly rural white drug users that are living in the jungle. And I don't say that with judgment at the drug using part. It's just the reality of what's happening down there. But Phoebe Brown's point, and I'll get to my point in a moment, but Phoebe Brown's point was that we should be looking at all the places where people are living unhoused. And when the discussion became back from Cynthia about, well, the county's really responsible for services. The city is responsible for infrastructure and safety. Phoebe Brown thought aloud, well, maybe I'm sitting on the wrong board. And I hear what Nathan's saying today, and I just want to say, I've been in that same boat where I've wanted to fix all of the services that our community has to offer. And the county is where services are done. And the county is where there's opportunities to expand and enhance a lot of the services in our county. But what we need to do in the city is get our house in order and do the things that we're tasked to do really, really well. And maybe one day down the road, we'll be able to think about how we can expand into new departments, but I don't think that time is today. And I think, again, we need to be thinking about the region that we live in, the county that we're a part of, and how to accomplish a lot of these goals together.
I like both your passion and when you got a chance to say something in a free form. Good. Nathan, I don't know if you write 2 closing statements a week, but now you got either a second one or reused last night's, by the way. Take it away.
Zero closing statements a week, even worse. But yeah, since David brought it up, yeah, I think exactly what Miss Phoebe said, and I sympathize with this for sure, is like she's here to serve people, not to serve infrastructure. And that's why she ran for council. That's why she's on council. And that's honestly why I was inspired to run for council and be part of the Solidarity Slate too, is because I love that mentality. I want to serve the people of Ithaca. And I hope that's come through as I've gone around and met so many of you and people from all walks of life in all different places. And yeah, that really is my priority, to serve the people of Ithaca. First and foremost, no matter who you may be. I guess on the topic of no matter who you may be, I'll segue to saying that another big priority of mine that hasn't come up in this discussion yet is just making Ithaca a safe place and a sanctuary city for LGBTQ people, for immigrants, for people of color, and for people seeking reproductive health care, because a lot of these groups are increasingly seeing their rights pushed against. And like when I was meeting with people in Planned Parenthood for the endorsement interview with them, they talked about how a big priority is pushing this legislation to guarantee equal rights and like have pregnancy outcome and that sort of thing as a protected class legally, which it's horrible that that conversation needs to be happening, but it like these people are at serious risk of discrimination and they're not being treated with respect everywhere. And I really want to stand up for reproductive rights and make sure that Ithaca does not succumb to that kind of vitriol that these people have faced in other places. So really emphasizing that trans people facing discrimination on any basis, these people will be protected in Ithaca. They're our neighbors. We're going to stand with them. We're going to do whatever it takes to protect them and to stand up for their rights.
Good timing, Nathan. You're getting used to this closing statement limitation. David, back to you.
Sure. I think I'll end where I started. This isn't the first time I've run for office. This is my third. I care so deeply about my family, about my neighbors, about my community, about the people that that I work with, the people that have worked around me, that have been in the programs. I care so deeply for the strangers down the street, and I feel so committed to giving back to my community, and I'm going to keep trying. But I hope that this is the time that I win, because I do care so much, and I hope that comes through. But I've had to do a lot of like soul searching and a lot of reconciling with past defeats, because it isn't easy to lose. And it's also not easy to lose when you think you should have won and felt like you were the best person. And that's like something I've had to really think about, is like my desire and what I think I'm good at. It doesn't matter. I'm not special. But what does matter is that I care and that I want to do a lot of good work for this community. And like, when I look back and thinking about like, man, I've lost to the late Henry Garrison. I've lost to Nicola Fave. I've lost to Eldred Harris. I've lost to a lot of people that look nothing like me. And I feel so proud as a Democrat that that's what happens in these races now, that I get to think about, you know, like why I lost, but I also get to be proud that the people that are representing me are diverse, represent all of the different parts of the community that we live in. And again, it just makes me really proud to be a Democrat. I hope that I still have been able to show how I can help, because I really do believe I can help. I don't say this from a sense of confidence, although I am confident in that, or a sense of arrogance. I say that because I believe deeply in the need to give back to community and to use the skills and the talents that you were given in this life for the betterment of the people around you. I believe so strongly in that. And I hope you vote for me this time. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you both. Well done. Especially after I suspect you had a exciting evening last night, which probably took some energy as well. So thanks for showing up again tonight and bringing some clarity and some thinking on each of these points that were coming right from the constituents themselves. So that concludes our debate tonight for the Ward 3 four-year seat. Thank you to David Shapiro. Thank you to Nathan Sitaraman. I got it right that time, Nathan. Primary election will be held on June 27th, the general election on November 7th. We go back now to Linda Hoffman for important information on the upcoming election season overall. Linda, take it away.
Thanks so much, Fred. First of all, a special thank you, shout out to the candidates. You've come forward to address an array of questions this evening, and you've given forward your thoughts on how to support the concerns and issues in Ward 3, but across the community of the city of Ithaca. And I personally thank you, and I feel all of those that have participated, thank you as well. It is a way that we are working and really showing what democracy can be in our community. So I thank you both for what you have answered and what you will face going forward. So thank you again. This forum is going to be on YouTube, and it will be youtube.com/TC Democrats. Ted Crane is going to just put up a slide so you can see that. Early voting for the primary is June 17th through June 25th. You will be voting early at the town of Ithaca Town Hall on Tioga Street. The days and hours, you need to just go to the website for the Board of Election, votetompkins.org. Or if you call Monday through Friday between 9 and 5, the number is 274-5522. Now, primary voting, as we have been repeating, is June 27th. The polls will open from 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. Again, if you have any questions, please go to votetompkins.org or call the Board of Election between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, 274-5522. I also would like to thank Ann Sullivan as the chair of Ward 3 for the superb coordination of this forum. Also, it is an amazing forum we've had. We couldn't have done this without Fred Balfour. So Fred, thank you so much for acting as moderator. And out to Ted Crane is another big handshake, and thank you for the awesome work as virtual coordinator. I thank everyone for joining us to go through the forum. Again, you can see it on youtube.com/TC Democrats. Thank you for joining the forum this evening. Good night.